Hello, friends, and welcome back to another action-packed episode of the Nintendo Gems podcast. My name is Braden, and as always, I'm across the table from my lovely brother and co-host,
Connor.
I do remember we said we were going to stop doing that.
Which part?
Where we pause and make the others say their name.
Do we?
Yeah, because it is difficult.
Stay tuned for the next action-packed episode of Nintendo Gems podcast, where this intro will be super different.
Thanks for tuning in.
No problem.
We're glad to be back with you. As always, apologies for the delay in episodes, but life is busy and this is for fun. It's a lot of fun, but we want to make sure we are putting out quality episodes when we finally get back around to it.
Of course, and this is quite the behemoth of a game to tackle, and we needed kind of as much time to marinate on it, to play it, to give it, the man hours, the time it takes to even scratch the surface on it, along with the time necessary to marinate on it and calculate exactly how we feel on it, because it's pretty complex. We're dealing with, I've already said this out loud pre-recording, but sort of an Elden Ring situation where this game is so big in scope and in the hype preceding it, and in its legacy, I think, going forward into the future, that, I feel like this episode will serve as a snapshot, a historic snapshot of how we feel about it right now in the year that it came out. But I anticipate feeling somewhat differently about it, say, 5 years in the future,
Sure, yeah.
It's a grower, for sure.
And yeah, we wanted to get our arms all the way around it, our brains wrapped around what it was that we were playing, experiencing. Because, it was, 5-6 years of hype?
6 years, yeah. Between
Breath of the Wild and the game that we are discussing today, Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom.
Woo!
Yeah.
Long time coming.
Exactly right. Well, and the other thing is, at the time of recording, it's been released for about 3 months and 12 days.
Damn.
So,
on the dot.
On the dot. Quick math, baby.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've taken our time. We wanted to get this right, and to call Connor out a little bit, he took his sweet damn time with it.
We'll get into it. I think I've already acknowledged that my opinion on this game is, a little inconclusive going into this discussion, because, spoiler alert, I beat the game. Mm-hmm. We both completed the game. Yep. Right, Braden?
Of course we did.
We both completed it. Some of us may have completed fewer core objectives throughout the course of the game than others. Sure. I won't name names.
Okay.
Yet.
We'll discuss.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Okay, we'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Screw you, man.
But yeah, man, this game came out 3 months ago. It is the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild being one of, we've had an episode on it in the, relatively speaking, recent past.
Yeah. Big
open-ended discussion on the game and its legacy and what we expected for this sequel that came out finally.
Sure.
Breath of the Wild was just such a, no pun intended, a breath of fresh air for the Zelda franchise, for open world video games as a medium for delivering interactive worlds and what a player can do in them. And Tears of the Kingdom, obviously, along with that, had a lot to deliver on.
Yeah.
And the journey approaching the release of this game was fascinating and not so tumultuous. I think it earned its stripes kind of on its way to being delivered to us. The trailers were just magnificent. Absolutely. They captured the same hype cycle that Breath of the Wild did, with just incredible music, showing off a lot of the fancy cutscenes, hyping up this new threat of Ganondorf coming back.
Yeah.
Playing some of the Zelda hits,
which was noticeably absent from Breath of the Wild.
Exactly,
it was something that a lot of fans were calling for and were curious. Well, and one of the first trailers, it was this mysterious spooky skeleton guy, just hanging from the ceiling or something like that, and we're who is this? Could it be Ganondorf? Is this a new enemy? And so, yeah, they built a whole lot of hype around a lot of different aspects, including, they delayed the game several times.
Exactly. Which is par for the course for Zelda games.
Yes.
For the big budget 3D Zelda games, ever since Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. I remember reading in Nintendo Power that, Twilight Princess was getting a 6-month delay, and it's dang it.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to it. But yeah, the slow drip of information that you can tell very, like, meticulously executed, like that first trailer, like you said, with the weird zombie figure that might have been Ganondorf, we weren't sure, on, like, the very first teaser trailer, and then later on it was confirmed that Ganondorf was in the game, was coming back, and then there was one trailer that showed off the vehicles
right
for the first time, and everyone kind of, like, took a collective pause and went, "What?
Where are we going?
Yeah, literally, where are we going with this game?" A lot of hints to Skyward Sword, obviously, with the sky.
Yep.
We could go through. I could sift through all shot by shot what each scene in the trailers made me feel and think was going to happen. I did not think that it was going to turn into Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts, even after seeing the vehicles in the trailer.
Yeah.
I was like, surely not. But it would be cool.
Yeah, right, yeah.
You know, I wasn't...
That's a choice.
Yeah, it wasn't a lament. It was just like a, no way.
Mm-hmm.
No way that this is the evolution of Breath of the Wild. Like,
right.
This is the direction they're taking it.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah.
3 months after release. And this game is a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
It is even more things than Breath of the Wild was. It is honestly almost just Breath of the Wild with a whole bunch more.
With some different, you know, the things that would have made it feel like overly repetitive, they did adjust. You know, it's the same overworld map, but things have happened to the world to affect the playability, the traversal, and so, like, you know, locations both interact and are visually different than they were in Breath of the Wild. They've added in some key new abilities that make these changes to the world more manageable, and more unique for the Tears of the Kingdom experience.
And the world of Tears of the Kingdom does reflect those changes. I think to kind of kick it off, let's be frank, the game follows a lot of the same structural beats as Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
What did we end up calling B-dubs? Can we just call Breath of the Wild B-dubs again?
Ooh, I like that.
Okay, just for sure, because it's kind of tongue-ties me a little bit.
Yeah.
B-dubs, it's... So in Zelda B-dubs, you wake up, and you are Link, and you wake up in the tutorial area. You go through a series of non-linear challenges to acquire your core set of abilities. And then once you acquire all of your abilities are like relatively familiarized with them and how they work in the world, you are set off to the rest of the game, where you have like 4 or so main core objectives to complete, and then you can go to Hyrule Castle and finish the game. And there's dozens and dozens and dozens of side quests. There's a bunch of collectibles. There's ways to upgrade your character. There's stuff to collect, stuff to explore. But Tears of the Kingdom ultimately follows this format. You start out in a tutorial area. It gives you your abilities, which is a different set of abilities than Breath of the Wild.
Right.
That's
very refreshing.
Yeah, very refreshing and very important. But Tears of the Kingdom, to me, has just a lot more flavor than Breath of the Wild did. Tears of the Kingdom really captured me at the outset.
Yeah.
It has it does something a little more cinematic than B-dubs did, where B-dubs kind of opens with like the intro cinematic and you wake up in the cave and then you're just kind of playing.
Right.
But Tears of the Kingdom starts with an interactive storytelling thing where you're going through that cave with Zelda.
Exactly, yeah.
And you have like full hearts and full stamina.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's the
Metroid-esque.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have like a fully upgraded character, quote unquote. And I guess it's kind of time to mention that this game does take place story-wise, like...
It's like 7 years after...
It's like 7 years. It's very, very vague intentionally so that they can do some other like storytelling and world-building flubs later.
Right.
They can kind of like fudge the numbers a little bit just so like some time has passed for some characters and less so than others.
Right.
Some characters remember you, some don't. But yeah, I thought the intro to the game was very effective. Hooked me. I really love the tutorial area, the Great Sky Plateau. Yeah,
it was fun. We both took the day off of work for the release of Breath of the Wild, and Connor came over to my place, and we sat on the couch, and I believe you were on the big screen, and I was on my handheld. Or we might have
Vice versa.
Is that right?
I got my OLED.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you were flexing the OLED.
3 months and 18 days ago to this day?
12.
12 days?
Yeah. And so, essentially, we played the Great... It's not the Great Plateau.
The Great Sky Island.
Yeah, right. That's a huge tutorial area all of its own. It really set pace for the scale that we were going to expect through the rest of the game. Because, I mean, it took me my first day of playing to really feel like I had that first tutorial area under control and like I was ready to move on. So, you know, like you said, you get all your abilities. It really leans into you starting to get creative with those and utilize the core mechanics that are going to make up the rest of the game. And so, you know, back to the nuts and bolts, you know, one of the main abilities is the ability to fuse items together. And so it teaches you to make a little sailboat. It'll give you some logs and a sail, and you connect them all together, and you float across the pond to get to the other side. I believe you get the Ascend ability there, which, if you're ready, I don't know if I'm...
We might as well launch into the abilities.
Speeding through a little too quickly for you, but
yeah. So the Ultra Hand is the ability that's kind of like Magnesis. Mm-hmm. In B-dubs, you have the Magnesis ability, which let you like pick up and manipulate metal objects.
Right.
And in this game, you can pick up and manipulate any object, any physics object in the game. You can move around, you can rotate it, and you can attach it to any other object in the game, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's, like Braden said, how you make the sailboats and stuff. And then there's Fuse, which lets you attach any of those objects to your weapons.
Yep.
And so if you attach, like, I don't know, a stick to your stick that you're already holding, it will increase its attack power, but also give it some extra reach. And etc. You can attach a boulder to your stick, and it'll make it a hammer and give it, like, striking properties. Yeah. You can attach, like, a ruby to it, and it'll give it fire properties. There's elemental stuff. And then Braden already mentioned Ascend, which is low-key my favorite ability. It is so... it's too early to lavish it so much. I will get to it.
Yeah.
But in function, it just lets you pass through any ceiling that's above you.
Yeah. So if you're in a cave, you'll use Ascend, and you will rise through to the surface, the next ground level surface that is essentially a floor. Yeah, very useful, very unique, and we will discuss that further.
Yes. And I guess, is it the final ability, sort of? Is Recall?
There's one that you get once you make it to the ground.
Right.
And so I do think you get Recall.
You get it in the Sky Island.
In the sky.
You get Recall, and it's almost the most, like, one of the more, I don't know, they're also ambitious. All these abilities are such huge, ambitious undertakings from, like, a game design standpoint, but beside the point, Recall, it lets you select any object, and it simply goes back in time and reverses its trajectory. It's
course of movement. It will reverse itself, and so if it's as simple as like a tree falling over, you can use Recall on it, and it'll stand itself upright. I don't know if that's physically possible within the actual course of the game, but like that's the idea. That's the mental image to give.
Right. Or if like a boulder is like rolling down a hill,
exactly,
you can hit Recall on it, and it will roll back up the hill, etc. And each ability feels like a debug tool.
Oh, yeah, they're all dev tools. Like, it's crazy.
I don't remember if it's a rumor or something, or if it's straight out of an interview, but you've heard that, like,
Ascend.
Yeah, it started as like a dev tool. Like the developers were using it to like debug stuff and like get around the map quickly, and then they just thought it was a good idea and stuck it in the game.
Let's make some puzzles around this. Let's implement this.
Thank God they did.
Yeah.
So that's like your core suite of abilities. Beyond that, everything's the same. I mean, more or less the same as B-dubs. You can climb every surface. You got your stamina, your hearts.
You have the paraglider.
Well,
that's... I think that's what I'm thinking of that you don't get in the Sky Islands.
Oh.
You get the paraglider once you make it down into Traverse Town. That's Kingdom Hearts, I'm pretty sure.
Lookout Point.
Lookout Landing.
Lookout Landing.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I mean, we're kind of skirting around something pretty huge, too. You do start the game in the sky.
Right.
You are not in Hyrule you're under Hyrule Castle in, like, the little beginning, like, cutscene, but the game starts proper, the tutorial starts proper with you in these floating islands that are in the sky. And when you step out, you see yourself like, a mile above Hyrule, and you look out in the distance, and there are hundreds of floating sky islands peppered across the horizon of Hyrule, and it's like, what's going... And Hyrule Castle is in the middle, in midair too,
Yeah.
Everything, a bunch of stuff has just kind of like started like floating above the land, and it's an extremely striking visual.
Yes.
That's the flavor I'm talking about, is like, off the bat, it is just more appealing visually, aesthetically, feelily than Breath of the Wild.
Vibes, baby.
I mean, literally, yeah. And the music while you're on the...
Shoot.
Yeah.
They stepped up the music.
We'll get into it too, but across the board, the music is more engaging, more memorable, more melodic. B-dubs was one of the more common criticisms lobbed its way from, like, at least Zelda fans that are used to strong melodies and stuff.
Yeah.
Was how minimal the soundtrack for B-dubs was. Intentionally so, meticulously minimal.
Yeah.
But this one, Tears of the Kingdom, certainly has a more engaging soundtrack most of the way through.
Sure.
And the Great Sky Islands are no exception. I love that music, love the atmosphere. The color palette is gorgeous, the yellow trees and stuff.
The golden fields.
Yeah. It's all so tasty.
Yeah.
But yeah, so already there's a change to the map.
Yeah.
This is a sequel to the Breath of the Wild, but in what way? It's kind of the question that we were all asking ourselves on the road to release of this game. Is like, is this going to have the same map as Breath of the Wild? Is it going to follow the same structure? Is it going to go back to conventional, like, 7 dungeons?
Right. That was a really big point of discussion. Was
totally.
Just, because I mean that was also a fairly common complaint. People didn't universally love the 4 themed elemental objectives. The divine beasts were not, totally appreciated as supposed to be the greatest challenges in the game.
Not universally, at least. I'm a little lukewarm on the divine beasts.
Yeah.
In Breath of the Wild, I don't hate them. They're functional.
They're functional, but they are short and they're simple. And people were pretty convinced, at least in the spheres that I was engaging in, that we were going to go back to dungeon style, temple style level design, and that we would have small keys and we would have boss dungeons, and that did not pan out to be reality. In fact, it did lean a little bit closer to what Breath of the Wild did. B-dubs. I should. I'm not using that term right. But Tears of the Kingdom did it has gone back to the 4 elements, essentially the same 4 locations as B-dub, and whether that's a hit or a miss is something that we ought to discuss.
Yeah, I think off the bat, I mean, I do want to emphasize that, like, when you step out onto the Great Sky Islands at the very beginning for the tutorial, it's clear that the map is different. It gives you a sense that the map, the Hyrule that you know from Breath of the Wild, has possibly more or less, like, doubled in size, because there's a whole new sky layer to it. However, what becomes quickly apparent after you complete the tutorial, you follow the story. We'll get into how we feel about, like, the story beats and the new characters and such in a little bit. I'm certain. But once you complete and you descend to the surface of Hyrule, it becomes quickly apparent that things are pretty darn different, pretty darn similar. Hyrule is similar, but once you get down to the surface, you start noticing these huge gaping chasms that are in the ground.
So you mentioned the Sky Islands are a mile off of the ground. These chasms seem to go for a mile underground.
At first glance, and they're covered in this there's a new sort of mechanic called gloom.
Right. There's
this toxic substance. It's kind of just like the goo from Super Mario Sunshine a little bit.
Yeah. And it has a really neat impact on your health as well. It not only it will damage you, but then it makes it where that heart can't be replenished unless you are refreshed by light. If you're on the surface and touching this gloom, your hearts will auto-generate.
it depletes your maximum health.
Yeah.
If you are, this goo substance, this gloom is like kind of like slathered on like some parts of the world, just like on the ground and on walls, and if you are exposed to it, it depletes your maximum health, which is a fascinating mechanic. I love it.
Yeah, it's cool.
love that. And then and if you're on the surface and if you're in the sunlight, those max hearts come back, or if you eat special food, cook special food. But these chasms, they're covered in gloom, and they're just these big gaping holes, these fissures on the ground. And if you hop down one, you will quickly notice that the map of Hyrule has like maybe kind of like actually doubled and a half in size.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah.
There is an entire underground map that is equal in size to the surface Hyrule, called the Depths, and
which is crazy because they did not advertise this before release. They managed to keep this whole portion of the game, portion of the map, more or less secret from the masses. That there's essentially an entire map of Hyrule underneath the map of Hyrule.
Right. Which it's so fascinating. There's layers to this because, like you said, they did not allude. It's a huge aspect of the game. Let's just for the record, there's an entire second map underground, like of an already enormous map, an enormous in-game world that is historic. I mean, Breath of the Wild changed the game in that regard, and they did it again and then made another one. They put the same one in the game and then made another one and stuck it underneath.
Yeah.
And they went heavy with like the sky in the marketing.
Right.
That was the obvious stuff. It was like, you get to explore the sky. There's sky islands above Hyrule now. That's the newness of the map. That's the cool stuff.
Yeah.
And then they showed the vehicle stuff, but you're right, they totally never showed the underground in any of the marketing, which is crazy. And such a huge chest-thumping challenge, I guess, to expectations.
Right.
To players' expectations. It's a power move.
It really, it was a big flex from Nintendo. And it's funny how it panned out that the sky, like the islands in the sky, are they are clearly less significant in scale, in size, almost in importance than the Depths.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Importance, I might disagree with you.
Okay, that could be fair. Importance to, like, moving on in the story, the Sky Islands, I do feel like, are more important, but scale-wise, like, there is much less to interact with in the sky than the actual Depths. I feel like they put more effort into the Depths.
We will return to this point. Bookmark this, because I still kind of disagree. We're both sort of consciously watching, I think, how immediately critical we're being of this game.
Sure.
Because don't get us wrong, we have plenty of criticisms to lob its way.
Yeah.
And it earns quite a bit of criticism. But we're still kind of painting the picture of how impressive this game is at the outset.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think the sky and the underground are of about equal significance, and we'll get to that. But I think it's fascinating, just to cap off an earlier point, that the underground was never mentioned. Do you think it has anything to do with Elden Ring?
In what way?
I wonder who had the idea first, because Elden Ring and Tears of the Kingdom were both like in development at the same time.
Right.
And Elden Ring took obvious influence from Breath of the Wild.
Sure.
Obvious. It's Dark Souls, but it's Breath of the Wild. Like, we know this. And I don't know. When Elden Ring unveils its underground, that's a moment too.
Yes.
That's something you don't see coming, and kind of, it was a significant revelatory moment for a lot of people. That, like, this game's big.
Yeah. And
I wonder if that influenced whether they even decided to market the underground for Tears of the Kingdom.
Sure.
Or if it influenced what the underground meant in Tears of the Kingdom, or if they like held it close to the chest because they knew it would. It's almost more impressive than Elden Ring's underground in some ways.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just interesting. It's just such a huge element of the game, totally hidden from public perception until the game came out, which is just rare for anything.
Yeah. I think it's funny. I think Elden Ring embraced the Breath of the Wild comparisons, but I don't think Tears of the Kingdom wanted Elden Ring comparisons.
Exactly, I agree.
You know,
that's what I think. But I don't know. I wonder if they truly like reserved themselves for that reason, or if it was just because.
Right.
I don't know. It's just interesting.
Sure.
So, continuing with the main elements of the game, we got the surface, we got the depths, we got the sky, we got the 4 points of interest on the map.
Right.
Which I found less compelling. Oh, also, well...
Yeah, no shit.
Well, okay, before that, I found it... You can miss the paraglider very easily.
Yeah, you can.
First of all, you can miss the paraglider very easily. They do not force it upon you when you leave the tutorial area like B-dubs.
Uh-huh.
You descend to the surface of Hyrule, and you're let loose in Hyrule before they give you the glider. You have to talk to a character, like as part of the main quest, sort of, to acquire the paraglider, which I don't like. I mean, it's not only because I missed it for a while. And same for a couple of the other, like, not core abilities, but, like, a few important abilities. Mm-hmm. Sort of, like, convenient ones.
Right.
The camera included, you have to do as part of a really annoying
side quest.
Yeah, I don't know. What say you?
This might be a ramp into some of the more critical conversation, but just overall, once you land on the ground, a lot of it really does feel pretty similar, in my view, to Breath of the Wild. You know, the gameplay mechanics are more or less the same. You have a sword weapon, you have a spear weapon, and you have like a heavy sword, a broadsword.
Two-handed sword.
Yeah, two-handed, there you go. And your bow as well, which always feels good. That's something they really did well with in Breath of the Wild, and obviously it feels just as good in Tears of the Kingdom. But you can capture horses and ride them around the map to get from point A to point B a little bit quicker. You can use your Ultra Hand to build some vehicles, and you have this interesting battery mechanic where you can power these vehicles and have them move with, you know, whatever magic electricity is going through you, but only for a limited time. This battery is something that you can expand as the game goes on, and so you can move these vehicles for longer. And so, like, the Zonai is... Zonai is not a word that we've used yet, but they are this ancient race of...
You mean the Sheikah?
Sure. I don't even know anymore.
I'm being facetious. I don't know if we'll have time to get all the way into it, but Tears of the Kingdom makes the story context with Breath of the Wild a little complex, because the Sheikah are basically not mentioned. And the Sheikah were the ancient technology people in Breath of the Wild, but now it's the Zonai.
Right. Who are the most ancient Hylians.
Yes, even more ancient and even more technologically advanced than the Sheikah in the first game. But yeah, the Zonai have developed this technology with the battery pack, and go on.
Well, and so you can acquire these. It's like a vending machine. It's like a gumball machine. And so you acquire these Zonai artifacts, and so they're pre-built technology. And so, like, the most common, I feel, that people use are either wheels or fans. Wheels obviously get around on the ground, and you can attach 4 wheels to any random plank of wood that you find.
A tree trunk, a boulder, some in the game story.
We used to ride these babies for miles.
I mean, literally, you can throw 4 wheels on a boulder, put a steering stick on it, and you can drive it around like a car.
Yeah. And fans are useful if you need to, take off from the ground, you can, or if you're trying to go from one cliff face to another, you know, across 2 mountains, you know, fans. Again, those were my probably 2 most commonly used Zonai devices, is what they're called. And you can build almost anything you need to using those core items.
True. For transportation, at least.
Sure.
You know. And the game is pretty liberal with these devices and, like, vehicle building materials. In the story of the game, Hyrule is rebuilding, and there's this company that's showed up called Hudson Construction, and they've left, like, building materials, like, all over Hyrule that you can sort of put together and attach, and, like, they've sort of left, like, raw building materials all over Hyrule for the player to use.
So in the context of the world, it's like, oh, did the great calamity like destroy your house? Here, build a new house. But you get to use them for whatever you need.
Yeah, you can use Ultra Hand to assemble them together, and these Zonai devices that you kind of collect around the world as well, you can attach them to those, make a little wooden cart, throw a fan on it, some bigger tires, some zoomies, and then you can get around Hyrule in style. Or you can make a plane, even, if you're taking off from in the air. The battery pack thing, the battery level, essentially functions as a third stat.
Sure.
Almost, in addition to health and stamina. A third, like, upgrade, sort of.
It's pretty stupid, dude.
It's stupid for...
Criticism number one.
Okay.
Let's talk about expanding your battery.
Okay. This might be a bigger, deeper topic than you think. Do we want to get into it?
I don't know where you're going to go, but sure. I'm ready.
Can I curse?
I did.
This is some Sonic Frontiers, that's what it's called. I got the name right on the first try. This is some Sonic Frontiers-ass number, like, shit.
Uh-huh.
What say you? And then I want to, there's a huge formula to this that's obnoxious.
Well, I would like to just briefly describe how obtuse it is to expand this battery.
Which, and for the record, hearts. Mm-hmm. This game has the same structure as beat-ups, right? Mm-hmm. Hearts, stamina. Right. The world is peppered with shrines. You complete the shrines. The shrines are based around your new abilities. Shrines, fantastic in this game.
Lovely.
Shrines are so much better in this game. And they're better, I would say, than beat-ups.
I think so. They're so... You can approach them from whatever angle you feel appropriate. You can basically break them and just ascend through half the crap. If you can manage to stick something in the right place, you can fuse a ramp together. You can tackle them in so many diverse ways.
Yeah, with these game dev ass abilities that the game has graced you with, obviously these shrines and their puzzles have multiple bizarre solutions that you are not always certain the developer intended. But classic, you complete 4, you get an upgrade to your hearts or your stamina.
Yes.
Right? Yep. And then now we have a third meter, a third gauge, your battery, which has a much more obtuse upgrade system. Do you want to give it a shot?
So I am a little rusty. I dumped 150 hours into this game, but over the course of the month post-release. And so I, honestly, have not dipped back into it much, if at all, in the last 2 months. And so I some of this is going off of memory, but so you find this ore called Zonite that is peppered typically throughout the depths, but
only in the depths.
It's in the Sky Islands every once in a while.
It's rare though.
Yeah, but you are rewarded for exploring the depths by being able to break this ore that contains Zonite. Once you have collected 100 pieces of this ore, you have to go to one of 3, maybe 4. No, in the depths there's quite a few.
But they're hard to find, and the depths are hard to navigate.
Yes. But you go to these forges, essentially.
Are these forges or crystal refineries? Because there's 2 different places you have to go.
Yeah, see, I'm trying... Yeah, I'm getting there, but like...
I'm trying to help you.
Yes.
But I'm also like trying to illustrate how obtuse this is.
You are... You are helping tremendously. Because, yes, you go to one of these crystal refineries, which, in essence, is a forge of sorts, and you trade in 100 of these Zonite ore for 1 battery charge. I don't think that's quite...
Not even yet. You're not even there.
But like, what is it? I know I'm not there yet, but you trade in 100 of these for 1 of another item.
It's for refined Zonite.
Is that what it's called?
Or crystal...
No, because there is large Zonite, which counts as like 3 smaller Zonite or something.
Well, you mine the Zonite ore, and it's Zonite. And then you take it to a refinery, and it's refined Zonite. So it's like the triangle-looking one.
Yeah.
But that's not 100 for 1. Uh-huh. You have to take your mined Zonite. And mining's not fun, by the way.
No.
That's the most important part. It's just like Minecraft. Like, it's just like you're using one of your weapons to like bash a mining node in the world, and you pick it up like normal items,
which does degrade your weapon, by the way.
And it does, and it wastes you. Yeah, it wastes your weapon degradation. But you mine it, and then you take it to the refinery. And remember, that's like the kind of like the shop. You spend your ore zonite to trade for the refined.
You get like a crystal charge or something.
And then it's 100 of those that you take to a different place.
Yes, maybe that's where the forge is.
Yeah.
The forge comes in.
And those have their other locations, their own separate few locations in the entire game world. Yes. One's in the sky, there are a few down below. There's one at Lookout Landing.
Right, yeah, there's one right by Lookout Landing.
Which I didn't even know for most of my playthrough.
Yeah, I remember telling you, and you were like, well, damn it.
Because it's like behind it. Yeah. It's like, I don't know, man. So, and then so you have you exchange your zonite for refined, crystallized zonite, or whatever, and then you need 100 of those. Yeah. To take to the forge construct to upgrade your battery.
By one segment, each battery has 3 little
notches.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah, you imagine like a battery icon on like a phone or like on like even on your Switch, like your Joy-Con's battery. There are 3 little notches on the battery, and 3 is full, 1's like red, and Yeah. And so you mine the zonite, you refine it, you spend 100 of those to get 1 notch on your battery life. Yeah.
So, I don't know, we just spent 5 minutes trying to describe how to upgrade your battery, and it is exactly as complicated and, frankly, annoying as it probably sounded for us to try and explain it.
It takes 5 minutes to explain it. It takes way longer to figure it out in game hours.
Yeah. And the biggest problem with it is that this is a very core function to what they are wanting us to take advantage of with this whole Ultra Hand, Fuse, make your own vehicle ability, because you want to build cool things. You want to make, at this point we've all seen the mecha constructs that people have created that just have flamethrowers coming out of their hands. They have, laser beams, they're rolling around on wheels and hovercraft, but every tiny little addition that you add like that drains more battery and makes the devices drain your battery more quickly. At the start of the game, you can barely get a hovercraft to float for 30 seconds. And even by the end of the game, if you're creating these more complex devices with weapons or multiple wheels and fans, etc.
There are dozens of zonite devices. There are cannons, there are lasers, there's, rockets, there's floating platforms that you can activate, there's time bombs, there's in terms of transportation, combat, and just weird, odd utility, the zonite devices there are many, many different kinds, and they all have a lot of wildly varying function. And the ceiling that the game, the game lets you attach pretty much as many of them together as you can. Right. I don't know how quickly the game crashes if you attach 50 rockets to each other. Right. I haven't tried it, but I've seen some pretty crazy stuff online. Yeah.
But it's all limited by this battery.
Right. You start the game with 3 notches, right? 1 battery icon. Right. And if you build, for example, a car with 4 wheels and a fan, it won't get you very far because your battery is so low. And any zonite device that you attach to a construct, an invention, a vehicle, the more zonite devices that take the battery that you attach, the faster your battery depletes. Right. Which, in theory, I think makes sense.
It's a logical choice. The idea and the actual practice between... Sorry, side tangent. You get this skill called auto build, where essentially you can access a catalog of pre-designed devices and vehicles and things like that the developers have given you, as well as you can access things that you've previously constructed. And so you can quickly just press a button and it reassembles things that you've built in the past. And so that does save time in the long run, but the ease of that and how much the developers want you to access these built, constructed... I typically did vehicles, and so my brain goes to vehicles. I didn't do many weapons, I suppose. It's a huge part of the game that is so hard to make common use of due to the limitations of this battery skill. Something doesn't square in my brain.
It's tragic because I can see it working. It's all in the elegance, or rather inelegance, of the incorporation of the underground, the acquisition of the materials needed, and that bizarre, crucial extra step between mining and refining.
Right.
So it's almost like, if we're getting into it, let's jump right into it. The underground almost does not justify itself existing.
That was where I least enjoyed spending my time.
I have more of the underground map uncovered than I do of the surface.
Okay.
In my playthrough.
Fair enough.
Which is hilarious to me. And, when we first mentioned it, it's like, when we were like getting into the core layout of the game, it's like, it's so cool.
Wow, it's huge.
It is huge.
There's a whole nother layer of the map.
And it's impressive, and it's fascinating, and it's interesting for a while, but it has to justify existing. It can't just be cool. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. It's unfathomable that there's a whole other map under the map, but what's in it? What can you do in it?
And the answer is not many things.
Right.
There are things, and there are
a lot of things.
There's elements that will assist the rest of your playthrough, but not much that is core to the experience.
Like a lot of the game, though, and like a lot of Breath of the Wild, even, part of the design core of the games is that you can skirt a lot of the game if you want to complete it. You practically don't have to visit the underground to beat this game.
Right.
There are a few of the core story dungeons take you underground, like the dungeons themselves are in the underground map, but that's pretty on rails how it takes you down there. Spoilers, the final challenge is found underground as well, like where the place you go to fight Ganondorf.
Right.
A la Hyrule Castle and B-dubs. But essentially, like what fills the underground map, the way it rationalizes existing is the Zonite. Mm-hmm. You mine Zonite down there. That's where it grows. So that's where you get it. The pose, I don't really feel like getting into that yet.
It's, if at all, it's...
I want to.
Okay.
Because it also helps justify the underground. But it's so big and so vast that they had to fill it with something. And I think it just had to be noise. Yeah. At some point. Because at some point it stops being significant. Mm-hmm. And it had to just be numbers, Zonite mining.
One of the... And sorry, it's dark down there.
Yes.
You cannot see in the underground.
Well, that's interesting. I like that.
It's cool, but you are throwing these seeds that glow every 10 seconds of movement so as to create a lit path. And so they've created this new item called Bright Bloom Seeds that you can attach to arrows, you can throw them, whatever method you'd like, and they create a sphere of light so that you can see a certain distance. And the depths are very mountainous as well. There's lots of cliff faces, and so if you can't just wander around in the dark, or you'll bump into something or walk into some gloom and your health will deteriorate. And so it is, yes, both interesting and well executed. It's different and cool that it's dark, but also it makes the depths that much more repetitive, perhaps.
Yes. The means for their existence is interesting. Mm-hmm. It is dark. The light mechanic is interesting. The seeds you throw around to illuminate. Most of the surface of the depths is covered in the gloom, the walls, the ground. And so that facilitate, and with like the big open, weirdly shaped environments underground, it emphasizes vehicle travel.
Right.
That's where like vehicles are like kind of most at home in a way. Mm-hmm. Like you're supposed to make like kind of big off-road big rigs and stuff to get around, traverse the underground.
Sure.
And you can attach lights to them so that you can see.
Or the fan favorite hover bike. Two fans and a control steering stick.
I mean, it's interesting stuff down there.
Yeah.
All the enemies inflict gloom damage so that when you get into combat, they take down your max health.
Right.
Every shrine. This is interesting.
Okay, it's cool.
All interesting.
This is neat.
Yeah, every shrine on the surface has an analog underground.
Yeah.
They're called light roots, and they're almost the same thing. I mean, they're not at all the same thing. They're just like these nodes underground that are in the same positions as the shrines on the surface. You activate them, and they illuminate that area of the underground so that you don't have to use lights, you don't have to use seeds. It's bright, and also it heals all of your gloom damage, so you get your max health back.
Mm-hmm. So nice little checkpoints as you are exploring the depths.
A few other things that they use to fill out the underground are Yiga clan bases. The Yiga clan is back with a vengeance.
Better than ever.
Kinda.
Actually, yeah.
The Yiga clan bases are cool. They're driving around Zonai vehicles, and you have to take them out. And when you conquer a Yiga clan base, you get a new schematic for your auto build.
And I'm sorry, just to pause on the Yiga. Do you remember what happened to
Koga?
Yeah. Do you remember what Koga's demise is in Breath of the Wild?
Yeah, he falls in a hole.
He falls. It feels like such a natural progression of like what the Yiga clan has come to. It's really intelligent, in my opinion. Actually.
Yeah, it's great. And I mean, they're literally hiding underground. Yeah, you know? They've been sent. The Yiga clan stuff is cool. Peppers the underground. There's a collectible scattered across just the ground, kind of like, I don't know, any like rings in Sonic.
But
they're
very arbitrarily.
Extremely arbitrarily. They're Poes, and they're called Poes just because of Remember Zelda.
Yeah.
But you can pick up these spirits. They're just little glowing orbs all over the ground of the depths, and you can trade them into these huge statues underground called bargainer statues, and essentially you can get like some unique items for them.
Right.
The underground is also home to the legacy Link costumes, like the green Link costumes from the old game, like
all the amiibo costumes from Breath of the Wild essentially are now accessible in game without the need for DLC or amiibo.
Which feels like the biggest rationalization for the underground.
Yeah.
It's the thing that I was exploring the underground to
and it's
find.
The crappiest armor too, though.
And it is not always worth it. But it looks cool.
It does.
I think I wish that they had incorporated some of the underground elements, like the bargainer statues, like the Yiga stuff, the vehicle emphasis. I wish that they just incorporated it into the surface somehow, into a more organic way.
Yeah. And
also, there's just like too many numbers.
Yeah.
The Sonic Frontiers comparison was that in Sonic Frontiers, like what'd you have to do? You have to collect gears to open the portals, and then the portals
you get little character tokens or something.
Yeah, memory tokens.
Memory tokens.
And then you had to in the levels you had to collect a certain amount of things, and then when you get a certain amount of things, you could fight the boss. Just a lot of currencies. Yeah. And in Tears of the Kingdom, there's way too many currencies. Mm-hmm. The fact that you have Zonite ore and refined Zonite and battery packs and the Poes and rupees still.
Yep.
And there's something in the sky, isn't there?
Well, there's an interesting collectible up there that upgrades your sages.
Oh, the sages will?
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to the sages yet.
Yeah, no.
I don't know. It's pretty. I've felt very frustrated with a lot of it. It felt like noise. It felt like filler. It felt like a waste of time a lot of the time. And I wish that they just made, if it's all a means to an end, to just like, here's a way to upgrade your battery, or here's a way to give you the Zelda costumes, or to give you like vehicle schematics. Mm-hmm. It's just not. It's not.
That's not justified enough.
It's not a strong enough means. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what the solution is, but it's just a part of this game being bigger almost than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Sages? Is that next? Or is there anything else you're thinking about the underground? I feel like we might return to it because...
Yeah. Well, and so we certainly expanded the whole Zonite battery charge criticism, because in my brain I'm like, all right, criticism number one,
right?
Done.
Well,
but it all does include itself.
Sure,
they all include each other.
Totally. It all influences. You can tell it's all an attempt at elegance, because it's like, here's a reason to go underground is to upgrade your battery. Here's a reason to visit different locations is to find the forge construct. Mm-hmm. Here's a reason to go to the Yiga places to collect schematics.
Auto build schematics, kind of like a reference.
To make other auto build creations. Also, the auto build requiring Zonite sucks.
Oh, yes.
That sucks.
Yes.
And the acquisition of Zonite is honestly the worst part. The fact that it's just mining. It's just mining.
Mining is not any different than finding rubies or sapphires. It's just these little rocks that are underground that, again, you take a hammer to a couple times, they break, and then you pick them up. And so it's not any kind of interesting...
But each of those rocks only drops like 3 or 4 Zonite.
Yeah.
And you need a whole bunch to make the refined stuff.
Yeah.
And then you have to take the refined stuff to another place. And it's just like, why?
Yeah.
And And again, to bring it full circle, like that vehicle, the cool, awesome, impressive, fascinating vehicle mechanic that they've so meticulously, lovingly made work in this huge game is just hard to use because there's this like barrier of entry, this barrier of noise, of nonsense, of like, gotta mind this stuff. Like, why not just tie it to like an actual challenge in the game, like a shrine or like just make it a reward for clearing an enemy base. Give me a battery thing, you know?
Sure.
Eliminate the entire underground. Make those rewards for the enemy bases on the surface a Zonai battery, and you've got a better game.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. And yet, again, with the vision of elegance that you can tell that they put into it, in the same way that, like, you can't take on as hard of challenges when you're low on hearts. You can't climb as high when your stamina's low. You're not really intended to make huge, complex contraptions at the beginning of the game before you've got a bigger battery.
Fair enough.
It is an attempt at a natural way of making the game more complex as it goes on.
Make you feel more powerful as you're playing.
Exactly. That's the clear intention. It just doesn't work in execution all the way.
There's, one just slightly interesting, and I don't understand, like, the logic behind it. But once I figured it out, it gave me an excuse to go to the depths. Do you know that when you break a weapon on the surface that is either rusty or, is it corroded?
Something like that.
Whenever the gloom came through the surface of Hyrule, it degraded all the weapons, and so they all break pretty quickly, and they're not as powerful. If you break one on the surface and you go to the depths, do you know those statues that are holding the weapons?
Yeah.
They are...
No.
Yes, they are the respawned, fully... Restored versions of the weapons that you've broken on the surface.
No.
I'm pretty confident, yes.
How do you know that?
I both noticed, I feel like I read it somewhere, and I don't think it has anything to do with your exact location either. I think it's even a little more arbitrary than that. It's just like, you break one, and then the next statue you come across, it's the restored version of the spear that you broke. But I'm pretty sure that's the mechanic at play with those statues in the depths.
That sounds crazy, but I buy it.
Yeah.
I thought they were just kind of around the field bosses, or like just kind of like peppered. They were kind of like a warning that like a combat is close.
Oh, interesting.
Is what I know. The pattern that I noticed is that those things are usually in the vicinity of like a big boss, like a boss in there.
No,
I don't know. That makes sense too.
Yeah,
I never noticed it.
Don't take either of our word for which of those is actually the correct, true purpose. But I'm pretty sure that some version of what I just said is the truth. From there, should we move into kind of the story elements, the sages? You know, I think the greatest umbrella to put it under would be the story beats.
Totally.
You know, to a degree.
I think this is a good time for that, and I think it's, worth noting off the bat for us right now, the word sages, that makes our brains tingle a little bit, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. It's
this game I both love and am just kind of hurt by how much it wields notable Zelda iconography and like
vocabulary,
jingles the keys in front of my face, you know? It's like let's just get it, like the sages are back. There's a sage of light, a sage of fire, a sage of water, much like other Zelda games. The dungeons are, in fact, this time around, the fire temple, the water temple, you know, just like the other Zelda games. Ganondorf is back, obviously. Like, there's so much. They brought back the Zelda flavor in a lot more full swing in this game than in Breath of the Wild, which got me for a while, for a long time, until past like the 100-hour mark or so, when I got like a little tired of it and started realizing that it wasn't. I came out of it just wishing kind of that they'd called everything maybe something else and not tried so hard to capitalize on it. Right.
It felt a little exploitative to us.
Yeah, a little shallow.
If you've played Ocarina of Time, all of these words are very triggering. You know, they are...
The first new character you meet in this game is named Rauru, the Sage of Light. Yeah, and for those uninitiated, that is a character in Ocarina of Time. That's the first character you meet when you're an adult.
And for those very uninitiated, That is the most popular Zelda game of all time.
Yes.
Highly regarded as one of the greatest games of all time.
Yes.
And so it's millions and millions and millions of people around the world are like, Rauru?
Yeah.
Sages? Temples? Wow!
Yeah, and you quickly find out in the story that Rauru is like, you know more about this than I do, considering the story that I consumed, or what little of it I did. But Rauru is married to Hylia?
Yes.
Hylia, the goddess of Hyrule from, like, Skyward Sword, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Is that her name in the game?
Buddy, you tell me. It beats me, isn't it?
Maybe.
Isn't she Hylia? She's like Rauru is like a weird furry man.
Yeah.
He is a Zonai. Zonai are a people in this game, much like the Goron and the Zora, the Rita.
An anthropomorphic people.
Yes.
A strange gazelle. If you haven't played this game, you'd have to look up a picture. There's no good way to describe them. But
the Zonai are the most furry of all the races, of all the people thus far.
Yeah.
And he's the first character you meet. He's the Sage of Light. He's like the one that administers all your abilities to you in the tutorial, and he gives you the lowdown of like what's going on in Hyrule. Ganondorf's back. Don't know if you heard. Also, got your arm. And I don't know if that's... Link's arm gets corrupted by Ganondorf at the very beginning, and Rauru gives Link his arm, which is why Link can use all of the Sage... Or not the Sage abilities. The Zonai abilities, the Ultra Hand, the Ascend, the Fuse, your core abilities. And then what?
Yeah, so, I mean, at the start of the game, like we alluded to it a little earlier, that you do have 4 core objectives, and similar to B-dubs, it's like, choose a direction and go. Mm-hmm. I do feel like it kind of shoehorns, based on like the objectives that it gives you, it kind of suggests that you go to the Rito town first, which I did not do. It suggests, a certain trajectory that most players might find the most streamlined, but you can go in any of the 4 diagonal cardinal directions that you would like to essentially reach one of the objectives. I played it very similarly, I believe, to how I played Breath of the Wild. I did the Zora domain, I did Goron, I did Rito, and then I did the Gerudo storylines, which then, once you've completed those 4, it kind of carries you into the end game. There's a few more story beats to hit before you're sent off to Hyrule Castle. But Connor didn't play it as structurally... He took advantage of the liberties that the game gives you as well. I played all 4 sages. I visited all 4 towns. I completed all the objectives. I went through all 4 temples. Spoiler alert again. I acquired the 5th sage, and then went on to defeat Ganondorf. But Connor, again, took advantage of like this open world structure. You have the ability to do as much of it or as little of it as you would like before completing the game.
I have never been, in any lifetime that I'm aware of, much of a main quest guy.
Yeah.
When it comes to open world or open-ended video games. And this game is no exception. And Breath of the Wild really wasn't either. I don't know, man. I've got over 100 hours in this game. I did 2 of the sages. I did the Zora dungeon, the whole Zora story segment. And for the record, like, much like in Breath of the Wild, it's you go to like the zone, the Zora zone, the Lanayru region. You follow the path. You go to Zora's domain.
Everything's water.
Yeah, everything's water. But there's like some kind of problem. Ganondorf has unleashed a monster on X location that is inflicting X environmental effect on the people there. And you team up with Y Sage, and you go to Z dungeon, and you defeat whatever monster is causing their problems. And then that area of the map is restored. Yippee. Pretty normal Zelda stuff. Yeah. But, man, the dialogue is so dry and boring and long and slow and pointless.
I was about to, and hardly relevant to the concerns that you have regarding saving Hyrule.
Right. And the game is so much fun. Tears of the Kingdom is so much fun to play when you're not being put in a box.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it might have felt better, or it would have felt differently. I don't know if it would have felt better strictly if I had done, what you alluded to, the way the game sort of directs you to the Rito zone first, which is interesting because that's not usually the first one you do.
Did you get that vibe as well?
Yes. Yeah, they were like, there's something, yeah, any villager or NPC or whatever up to that point was like,
people need help up there.
Yeah, in this zone in particular. They were like, there's stuff happening everywhere, but like the Rito village is being beset by snow.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but I like the Zoras.
Yeah.
But man, my experience, you go to the Zora place, you talk to way too many people, it gives you a few like little objectives, like you have to photograph the one slate, you have to go up in the Sky Islands. And then, I don't know, anything that involves like just running back and forth between characters and talking to them was annoying because it was just going back and forth. It wasn't engaging with any like meaningful mechanics or conflict or anything.
You got a cool waterfall shirt.
You get your cool waterfall shirt.
You can scale waterfalls.
You can do that in the first one, and nothing new. And like every character just like talks for way too long about not much important.
Yeah,
almost ever. There's just like it's like they're trying to inject personality into the characters by making them talk as much as possible, which just doesn't work.
It doesn't, but it's also, you can see that they heard the complaints from B-dubs,
right,
regarding the lack of story, the lack of emotional investment that a lot of players had with the world and the characters. Just that they didn't feel like there was much drive to. I think objectively there was a lack of story in Breath of the Wild.
I agree,
and they have tried to remedy that with Tears of the Kingdom, for better or worse, and often in really non-meaningful ways.
Exactly, it's another means to an end conversation. It's like it feels exactly like what you just described. It's like, let's make more story in this game. How do you make more story? Make them talk more.
Yeah.
More dialogue equals more story, which is like, I guess more storytelling is not better storytelling. But you're also, woven into that is like this repeating of all the Zelda stuff, all the Zelda beats, like the sages and the temples. The temples are like, they're the fire temple. It means something to the Gorons. It's like something in their culture, and there's like Goron iconography in the fire temple, and that's cool. And like same for the Zora stuff. Like the temples are themed and are neat, at least for the 2.5 that I can speak for.
Yeah,
I did half of the Spirit Temple. Thank you very much.
Okay, good for you.
And I have a question about that later in a second. Remind me. But yeah, it's all filled with more flavor, more world building, a more detectable, earnest attempt at delivering a breathing world, a more engrossing story with like more characters. Because I guess Breath of the Wild had the heroes, the champions.
Yeah.
And this one, the sages. Oh man, the repeated Demon King. What's the other one? Demon King? Secret Stones?
Yeah.
Oh man. I don't know. What do you say? I don't know how to You have more exposure to it, so you drop into that point.
I sure do.
I did it twice and I was out.
Well, on a very basic level, I don't have to go too far into it, but the temples are frankly not much more than the divine beasts ever were either. It varies depending on the temple, but the structures are very much the same. Like, there's essentially 4 locks sealing the boss door, and you have to go around and use whatever sage ability you receive to unlock the 4 locks on the door, and then go fight the boss. Similar
real quick, to Breath of the Wild, after you complete each of the 4 areas of Breath of the Wild, each one gives you a champion's ability, a sort of like ability or passive buff that Link kind of gets.
Yes.
That's themed around the element, like water, fire, whatever, and helps you for the rest of the game.
Right. And so these sages, they are essentially the 4 champions that B-dubs gave you as well, but this time they follow you around as little avatars. and you can turn them on or off depending on how much they annoy you, because they can get in your way. You activate their abilities by walking over to them and pressing A. And so a lot of times they'll run up on you as you're trying to pick up an item or, do something, interact with something in the world, and you'll end up activating their Sage ability. Mm-hmm. And so, I guess I'm a glutton for punishment. I kept all of the Sages activated at all times throughout my entire playthrough, because I did think it was kind of cool having a little posse following me around, but I know a lot of people would deactivate them if they didn't feel the need to have them turned on.
Man, I had them off. Unless I was using the Goron to, bomb some rocks.
Yeah.
I had them off. They were just in the way. They blocked the camera. They blocked my view.
Totally.
I didn't like accidentally activating their abilities. And also, I didn't like that they helped in combat.
Interesting.
This is another thing where it felt like they took some influence from Dark Souls and Elden Ring.
Yeah,
I think we might have
talked about
Spirit
Ashes.
Yeah, it felt there's built-in summons in the game, and that's cool. And the combat encounters reflect that too, because enemies are a little more vicious in this game than Breath of the Wild, and a little more numerous. And there's more the enemy encounters feel balanced around having a bigger posse.
Yeah,
even though I don't quite enjoy it in execution as much.
Right, but yeah, the temples are they feel pretty watered down. They are not anything. They call them temples, but if you've played any other previous Zelda game, if you're imagining a temple, it is not that.
They're aesthetically cool. They're themed cool.
Dude, the Fire Temple was hot garbage.
The Fire
Pun
Temple...
intended, I guess. But,
the Fire Temple was... Okay, I still think it was cool.
It was
but
cool.
What a goddamn mess. That's the one that scared me from doing the others.
Yeah. Structurally, the getting around... I broke the temple. The only way I managed to finish it. I just ascended through a couple janky ledges that they accidentally left there, and then I would ascend one more time, and I guess I made it to the lock that I needed to unlock. But, there's these complex rail systems and mine carts that you're supposed to be riding around.
It gives the artifice of, this is a complex dungeon with, some depth and, its own maybe even central mechanic to it with the mine carts and this intricate railway system that goes through the entire temple, which is not a whole... It's a pretty small temple.
They're all pretty small.
And, but you open up the map for this fire temple, and there's 5 floors.
Right.
And, not a whole lot of platforms, but there's just, this web, this, subway, this, New York subway system level, intertangled web of minecart railways that's just a mess, and I don't know how you're supposed to navigate. And most conversations that I've witnessed or had with people is they just climbed around and ascended and didn't engage with that part of it, which is a shame.
Right. And so long story short, some of the bosses were pretty cool. It's a shame you didn't fight the Rito boss, because it was actually a lot of fun. You probably did, didn't you? Okay, we'll get there.
Uh-huh.
So some of the bosses were cooler than others, but for all intents and purposes, the temples were frankly no more interesting than any of the shrines that you would interact with. Just kind of maybe longer shrines. And again, most of the surrounding context of the temples weren't much more interesting either. Just like you said, all the conversations with the characters were never truly meaningful to the pursuit of saving Hyrule and defeating Ganon.
And it sucks that the where that flavor, the game in general has so much more intended flavor, so much more aesthetic quality and depth to it than Breath of the Wild, and it's just such a huge disappointment and shame that flavor is so weak when it comes to the 4 core story
big
sections.
Moments.
Big moments. Something that you haven't gotten to maybe yet is that these sages, each area kind of has the story arc for the sage. You reunite with the sage. You met them in the first game in some capacity. You reunite with them, you help them solve the area's problem, and you go to the dungeon with them and beat the boss alongside them, which is neat.
Yeah.
Link sort of forms a relationship with them. However, each sage follows within the realms of script writing, copy-pasted arcs.
Yes.
Each sage, you meet them and help them overcome their challenge, and then the previous generational sage like appears to them in a vision and is like, you are the sage of X element. This is your ability. You are meant to fight the Demon King Ganondorf, and you have a secret stone. And every time the sage says, Demon King? Secret stone?
Yeah.
Copy-pasted every single and it's the same exact scene with the same exact shots and script beats and everything 4 times.
Yeah.
And it's it could have been, there's no reason that it couldn't have been a little cooler or more interesting or something.
Yeah.
When so much of the rest of the game lives up to the expectations practically.
Right.
If we're ready to get into it yet, but like the tears.
Yeah. The other story segment that honestly provides the most context for why you're doing what you're doing are the tears of the kingdom.
Ta-da!
There's these huge glyphs, these huge
geoglyphs they call them.
Yeah, they're geoglyphs, but they're just these huge printed images of ancient hieroglyphs.
It's like if God just like took a stamp and stamped the earth with like a big weird hieroglyph. You know, kind of like Hyrule glyph, if you will, or like what do you call the alien things?
Oh, crop circles.
Crop circle. Yeah, they kind of just look like crop circles, which is cool because you can see them on the map from the sky.
Right.
When you're up in the Sky Islands, you can see these huge crop circle looking images just like stretched across fields and mountains. Yeah. And they look very visually striking. Yeah. They're very fascinating looking.
And each one contains a tier from who knows what. We'll get there in some deep spoiler territory, I'm sure. But you go access these tiers, and they give you a vision of what exactly Zelda is going through on her adventure. Like, there's some weird time travel play. Like, Zelda is essentially sent back in time to see how she can impact the future. She meets Roru and Hylia, if that's what her name is. Roru and his wife.
His human wife.
Yeah, the precursors to all of civilization in Hyrule. And she's learning what it means to have the power of light. Actually, she's the Sage of Time, isn't she?
That's correct. And this, more or less, being analogous to the photo memories from Breath of the Wild.
Exactly.
It's sort of while the four big story beats are the core structure, there's kind of like this extra secondary storytelling world building exercise you can kind of engage in that gives you these lavish that rewards you for these with these lavish cutscenes with voice dialogue and important story beats that are exciting. It's the stuff they show in the trailer.
Right.
It was the case for Breath of the Wild too, and it's pretty much the case for Tears of the Kingdom. All the cool looking cinematic stuff that's in the trailers comes from these essentially optional cutscenes.
Yeah. I don't know how much more to mention about them.
I'll ask something that I genuinely don't know.
Okay.
Is there some kind of reward for completing all of them?
I don't recall any...
Does anything different happen? Maybe something in the final cutscene?
I don't believe so, other than just true knowledge as to what exactly is going on and why you are interacting with certain elements of the world in the way that you are, such as retrieving the Master Sword, things like that. Because should you not play any of the sages, not get any of the tiers, assuming you get the Master Sword, you might be like, what is going on? What is this weird dragon flying through the sky? Of course, the 3 elemental dragons return that were flying around so elegantly and beautifully in Breath of the Wild, and now there's a 4th. It has the Master Sword stuck in its forehead, and the tiers that you collect through these geoglyphs and the cutscenes that they unlock really reveal the true nature of why the Master Sword is where it is and why the dragon is in the sky as well.
It's maybe the best part of the story.
It's is.
I don't know.
It is the story.
It's the only good part of the story. It's not true. I like the game. I like some of the game.
I remember what I wanted to talk about with the temples, though.
Oh, what?
The dare message from the Gorons. The whole drugs are bad.
Oh my!
No,
God.
It's literally the tears are literally the only good part of the story.
Let's talk about the drugs.
Okay.
The Gorons are literally addicted to crack rock.
Yeah.
Each area has its own environmental problem that they're going through. The Zoras are dealing with mud in all of their water. The Rito village is frozen over. The Gorons are addicted to crack rock.
It's like rock infused with gloom or something like that. I think
I hate the name.
Technically what is it even called?
Marbled rock roast.
Yeah,
I hated everything about. I didn't hate the fact that it was a like crazy brazen allegory for the crack epidemic.
Yeah.
I did not hate that. I was simply flabbergasted by it and find it immensely interesting. But the way that they told it was certainly awful, and like they really tried to make it as uninteresting as possible.
Yeah,
sort of,
dude.
As dry and like, this is just how it is. This doesn't.
These
mean
silly Gorons just eat this rock, and they just want to eat more rock. They just rock.
Yeah, and it. Oh my god.
Sorry, that's it. No,
we're totally the craziest part of the game. Maybe I don't know. I mean, I don't know how the are the Gibdos in the Gerudo land so political.
No, not at all. There's a weird little tower defense portion of fighting off the Gibdos, which is functionally gameplay wise just an interesting detour that you literally like assign Gerudo guards to like a couple gates, and then you're presumed to guard the other gate, and like you can use these cannons and stuff like that for 5 minutes, ward off hordes of Gibdo, which was ultimately unsatisfying as well. But
fair.
Other than the Goron crack rocks, that was probably the oddest.
So wild.
Yeah.
Good point. Yes. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. I'm glad you played the Goron section.
Yeah.
Having only played half of the, more like 40% of the outline.
It's 50%. I got halfway through the Spirit Temple.
Okay. All right.
I will contend with that.
Okay.
I got halfway through the Spirit Temple and got annoyed and confused and quit.
So you don't have to get the full mech?
I don't have the mech.
Okay.
I've assembled like 2 or 3 pieces of it.
Right.
And then got annoyed with one of the pieces. I was like, I'm in the underground.
I guess of course you don't have to, because I mean
boring.
You can literally go straight to...
I don't know who this character is because I haven't watched the cutscenes.
Yeah, right. I hardly know who she is. It feels irrelevant. It felt weird that Raru's sister. Spoilers. All right, we're gonna start rolling downhill
with in-game stuff.
Yeah, I think we're gonna start moving pretty quickly here.
Okay, but spoiler alert. Then
it's weird that Raru's sister, who you see in 2 or 3 of the cutscenes of the Tears cutscenes, she becomes like the seminal character. She becomes
that's what it's felt like.
The sage to end all sages. She is essentially occupying this Zonai mech, which is badass and like what everybody strives to build as they are, using Ultra Hand to build these complex machines. They essentially grant you one in the form of a sage, and I wish I could remember her name. Minoru, yeah. Minoru, I think is how they pronounce it through the cutscenes.
I think I met her in like one cutscene. Like actually, she was in one of them, and they addressed her as Minoru, and like, but that's. I don't know. I don't really care or know.
I didn't care either, and I was happy to have a mech running behind me that I could hop on and like use a flamethrower every once in a while. But overall, like it also felt somewhat shoehorned, very abrupt, and not asked for.
Sure. So the Spirit Temple is the 5th dungeon.
Right.
There's 4 core ones, and then there's how does it funnel you towards the Spirit Temple? Canonically.
I don't quite recall the story beats exactly, but I mean, once you collect Minoru's spirit and assemble the mech, if I recall correctly, you basically, it's like, all right, go beat Ganon.
So that
you have the power.
Quick too.
You have the power of the sages, and you're ready to rock and roll. And so it sends you down into the depths of Hyrule Castle to fight Ganondorf.
Is it easier to get through that final? I mean, through the tunnels rather. To get to the final encounter, is it easier to get there with the mech?
Not that I recall. It was pretty. That was a pretty challenging period. Getting through all, because it sends you through the depths. You basically retrace your steps, if I'm not mistaken, of the intro sequence.
Yeah. Well, sort of. It's not so. I didn't feel like it. I only registered that after a while. You're kind of like going through like sort of generic tunnel full of enemies for a while, and then I guess you'd come upon those murals again. Right. I
think yeah.
Also, for the record, I would like to mention I found the Spirit Temple by accident.
Yeah, you can do that.
I found it in the sky. We talked about this. Yeah. I found like some Dragon Head Island, and it told me to dive down into the depths. Minoru was like calling me.
Mm-hmm.
Now I kind of wish I'd finished the temple because I'd be curious if it like told me to go fight Ganondorf. But anyway, go on. The final gauntlet.
Yeah, you're traversing the depths, tunnels, more or less, which differs from the traditional depths. It's much more narrow and direct, whereas the depths overall are just huge, sprawling landscape. And you fight some of the strongest enemies. You have... Ooh, this is where our gameplay experience differs a little bit, actually. You fight like a series of Lynels, and a bunch of other large-scale enemies that you've probably encountered throughout the rest of your gameplay, and it's kind of just like testing your mettle before the final boss. I completed all of the sages and all of the temples, and so I was fairly streamlined straight towards Ganondorf. But I do know for a fact that if you don't complete all of the temples, you have to go through a boss gauntlet. Is that right?
That is right. Well, and you riddle me this as the one that beat everything. Did you still have to fight like an onslaught of regular enemies?
Yes.
Okay. With the sages. The sages all come out. But I think that's cool.
It was kind of cool.
For the record, I like the finale.
Uh-huh.
I played the finale a little bit begrudgingly because I just felt bad that I wasn't motivated properly to do all the necessary story stuff up to that point, because I knew it was going to pay off if I had.
Right.
And after the fact, I do still sort of wish that I had completed the story stuff only to make the finale more satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
But it was already I'm also glad I did, because it was hard, it was challenging.
Yeah.
I had to fight 3 bosses.
Right.
In addition to the horde of enemies, and then the Ganondorfs.
Because, you have to fight the bosses that you did not complete throughout your regular gameplay, right?
Correct. Just as in Breath of the Wild. Mm-hmm. Same for that. If you approach Ganon without having completed some of the core objectives, it will make you fight those dungeon bosses again before you fight Ganon proper. Just as in this one. So I had to fight 3 extra bosses. I did, in fact, fight Colgera. Very cool.
Yeah.
Do approve. But the Spirit Temple boss was strange.
That's the one where you're fighting with... Wait, so you didn't have the mech?
I didn't have the mech.
What the hell?
I don't even know how that's I used a bunch of bombs.
Yeah.
I guess.
And Yunobo, would you just like smash him into it?
Yeah.
Or what?
Uh-huh.
Weird. Okay.
It was weird. It felt weird and wrong.
Because with the mech, it's like a boxing match.
You
know what
totally.
I mean? And
then like it set up the ring and stuff. Like there were the electric walls and shit. And
weird.
Colgera obviously was just underground, not in the sky.
Yeah.
As I guess it would have been in Rio Town.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool. I mean, it felt like a really, really long, epic final boss gauntlet.
Mm-hmm.
3 bosses, a big. It throws a big wave of regular waves of regular enemies at you.
Yeah, tiny moblins.
As part of like the boss gauntlet, which is really cool because it makes the sages shine. It like shows that that's like kind of the cathartic direction that building up the sages is heading towards.
Sure.
Is that like the more sages you have and the stronger they are, the sort of easier that encounter becomes.
So you defeat the final bosses, not the final bosses, but and you make your way through the tunnels and you approach Ganondorf. What do you think of the Ganondorf fight?
I liked it.
Really?
Uh-oh. I think so. I'm not over the moon about it. I didn't love it. I'm not in love with it, but it's not its own fault. I think it's all really cool and really good and really interesting. Even like the gimmicky stuff that they throw in there, I do love and appreciate, but it is everything that came before it. I mean, it's just like almost, or the lack thereof. That's on me that I didn't get more like narrative context for Ganondorf by not doing the story stuff. I don't know. But go on. What are you thinking?
Well, so this is a piece of information that I was kind of saving for like my more closing thoughts for a few minutes from now, but it is relevant to this final boss fight. I completed all 152 shrines before I went and fought Ganondorf.
Whoa.
So I prioritized my health. I had all 40 hearts, and so therefore I was missing like 2 slots of stamina or whatever. It's a weird. I don't know why they did it like that.
You can't get full stamina?
No, you can't.
What?
You can't do both.
Yeah, you can.
No, you can't. You cannot. The math does not add up. You cannot have full hearts and full stamina. It was the same in Breath of the Wild.
Are you sure?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the DLC made it where you could get full hearts and stamina.
But that one had 120 shrines. Does that not mathematically even out for the... Maybe not. I don't know.
I know for a fact I did all the shrines and I did not have full stamina.
I trust that, but I believe you.
And so maybe, and I got all the great fairies, so I was able to fully upgrade. I did not spoof any items. There was great drama on the internet regarding duplicating items to sell and then make infinite rupees or whatever. I didn't do that, but I did fully upgrade my favorite set of armor, and so I felt very strong. I wanted to feel very strong.
Did you upgrade any of your sages?
No, I never found enough Sage's Will in the sky to actually upgrade even one of my sages. Okay. Which is interesting. I had a hard time tracking those down.
They're silly.
Yeah. But, so overall, not only did I possibly make it too easy for myself by upgrading my health too much and having my armor fully upgraded, but I also found the initial Ganondorf portion of the end game a little just thematically underwhelming. The room you're in isn't very big. It looks like the depths. I wanted to be on a falling platform, falling through the sky as I'm going on this. I don't know. I imagine Wind Waker. That is such an epic duel to be had, and you're in Wind Waker. You are still in a static arena type area, but something about it just feels epic, and every swing is very important. And then, on the converse, Twilight Princess has all 3 stages, where you're on horseback, and then you're in a duel, and you fight Beast Ganon. And so I was just expecting some epic series of events where it just gradually unfolds and it's difficult. And again, to go to Elden Ring, we had postulated that perhaps it's just going to be some really hard, just grueling boss fight to finally finish this game. And I did not find that to be the case fighting Ganondorf. Again, I might have made it too easy for myself, but overall I found even his attack patterns, his attacks weren't very interesting to me. He was just pretty easy.
I think it's all unfortunate because it's all a circumstance of the core design direction that they have gone with this game and B-dubs initially, which is it's just about player freedom. Mm-hmm. However, there is no wrong way to approach anything in the game, frankly. Right. And that is often rewarding and often disappointing. Mm-hmm. Right? And when they tie that design philosophy to the game's, single digit, handful of, core objectives, it's you don't have to do that. You don't have to. And when they tie the completion of those core objectives to the quality of the bookend of the game, the finale. Yeah. That is almost a flaw. Almost. Because we had different experiences and with different levels of catharsis. Mm-hmm. I had a great time. Yeah. I agree. They could have sprinkled even more Zelda iconography on it, bring us up to the tip of Hyrule Castle or something, make it Ganon's castle. Yeah. I don't know, make it rain or something, I don't care. Yeah. Right. I keep blaming it on myself for not having done the story stuff. It's I don't know, I guess I didn't have much investment in Ganondorf. I don't really know what he was about yet. There wasn't as much narrative context, narrative build-up for me. Yeah. But Ganondorf was only in 1 or 2 of the Tears of the And I watched one of them. Context, by the way. Sure. You still had minimal knowledge as to who and why and what Ganondorf was. And not they did much with it anyway. He's just evil. Demon King, Secret Stones? Yeah. He's just the Demon King, and that's it. With that being said, there's no reason they couldn't have injected more narrative importance into the final encounter. Mechanically, I felt like I hit the sweet spot. I had the Master Sword, which I do almost regret because it's just like your only weapon that you use for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because it never dies and it does damage to him. But I don't know, man. I loved that I had to fight 3 bosses. Mm-hmm. I loved that I had to fight the gauntlet of enemies with a few sages, so it was mostly me.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gotten my perfect dodges down pat, like, no problem.
Sure.
It was just a good test for it. And then fighting Ganondorf, and I didn't even have a full row of hearts, mind you.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Full stamina all day. But I got back into my no helmet original costume because Ganondorf's looking samurai ass, right. and I had to go back, no shield, just the Master Sword, 1-on-1 sword duel. Get me in my weird sky clothes, the clothes that are like on the cover of the box.
Yep.
Get me in there, and there it is too. Like the openness is like let the player decide it. I made my own stakes, kind of. It felt cool. I felt it when he hit me. I felt it when he dodged my parry, dodged my thing.
That was cool.
That's cool.
All right, fine. Yeah.
And
Ganondorf parrying you back is cool.
That's what I was looking out for. Mm-hmm. Is because what's interesting, what's so subtle about each of these Zelda games that comes out. In Wind Waker, do you know how you deliver the final blow? Do you remember?
You stab him in the head.
Do you know how you do that? Do you remember?
It's like a quick time event. You have to like press A at the right time, right?
It's by mastering the combat mechanic that was there the whole time. You know, it's that parry mechanic that's in Wind Waker.
Right.
You use it as the final blow. Mm-hmm. In Twilight Princess, similar. You use the finishing blow on Ganondorf. You have to knock him down first. Mm-hmm. And in Skyward Sword, you have to use the Skyward Strike.
Yes.
And I thought it was... I mean, it's just brilliant that Ganondorf perfect dodges your hits. And then you have to perfect dodge his perfect dodge. Yeah. You know, and in Ocarina of Time, the bouncing of the sword, you know, like the dueling aspect of fighting Ganondorf one-on-one as Link, let alone when you're just wielding the Master Sword, ready, batter up, you know.
Yeah.
I had a good time with that battle. I died a couple times in that battle, and when he changes form, and they throw another silly little gimmick on there where his health bar
goes off the screen.
It's awesome. Why
cool.
not?
Okay, that was weird though that they decided to go video game.
Sure, it brought
HUD meta on the very last 30 seconds of the game or whatever. I did think that was a little goofy.
They had not earned it all the way, but
it was cool.
But
it was
like,
cool.
Hats off. Come on.
Yes.
Come
no,
on.
It was absolutely...
And that's when I put on my green Link outfit and put my shield back out and was like, okay, we're in final form right now. Let's go. Mm-hmm. You're going to get it.
We're going to go Undertale now.
I mean, kind of. And granted, you're not wrong. I think what I didn't need was aesthetic stakes. Or what I didn't realize I wanted was aesthetic stakes. You're right. I facilitated those myself a little bit. Yeah. They could have provided more with a better set piece, However, what I was looking out for was like mechanical theming, right? And I got that. Yeah. I was ecstatic. I was very well pleased, and I had a great battle. It did feel unearned, but again, kind of blaming it on myself because I didn't do everything. But it's also sort of the game's fault because they could have added more stakes, whatever. And I mean, all in all, yeah, the second form did feel too much like the first form. I'll say it. It's the same. It's the same stuff. He glows and he has a bigger health bar and like hits harder, but that's kind of almost it. Yeah. And then and my expectations for the Ganondorf battle at this juncture were not so high because I knew, not literally, but I assumed correctly that I knew what was coming next, which was the Beast phase. Yes. You know, I knew that this was not the actual final battle. Right. Of course. These Zelda people really love Sonic Adventure. Do you get that vibe? The Sonic Adventure games always end with like, there's an Eggman, you fight Eggman's final battle at some point, and then you fight the big beast monster, like in space or whatever, or just like that's how the Sonic games have gone this whole time, and that's like where you play the final, like the main theme, and like it all comes to fruition, and Tears of the Kingdom just like cranks that up even more so. Breath of the Wild did that same thing, and then now we're back.
Well, and
that's not a complaint.
No, so I will rewind just a touch.
Yes.
Because, yes, I've complained about the Ganondorf fight thus far, but the grand finale fight was ultimately very satisfying for me. Because, ultimate spoilers, Zelda eats this tear of the kingdom in one of the tear flashbacks, and she becomes a eternal dragon in order to recharge the Master Sword so that in current times Link can draw the Master Sword, which had originally been shattered in the intro sequence, to full power and be able to defeat Ganon. And so we learn that by eating a tear, you become an eternal dragon. Well, Ganondorf in his desperation consumes his tear of the kingdom, his secret stone, to bring it all right back around, and he becomes a dragon as well. And so the final battle is this really epic battle.
And there's your set piece.
Yes.
Like that's why I wasn't expecting it for that battle in particular. I wouldn't, in retrospect, it would have been cool if the set piece were greater for Ganondorf, but I knew in the back of my head, I was like, the capstone set piece is coming.
Totally.
Because beat-ups did the same thing.
Yes. But you are bouncing back and forth between Zelda as a dragon and Ganondorf as a dragon. We can call him Ganon at this point. Where you are
falling and flying around in the sky, like in the sky map of the main map, so it kind of brings it all full circle.
Yes. And it is also not inherently a difficult portion of the fight overall, but it is very intense and visually satisfying and incorporates just a lot of different mechanics from the game, like the soaring and diving. You know, you can speed up your falls to fall faster. And so it's really, frankly, badass, just the whole dueling dragons element of the final portion of the fight.
Fighting alongside Zelda, no less, is cool thematically.
As a tragic dragon, because
the
story overall is very lacking, but she will not retain her personality as Zelda. She is just kind of this beast. Yeah, she is sacrificing herself in order to recharge the Master Sword to save Hyrule later on. They do bring some of those elements full circle, and Ganon obviously gets owned. And then Zelda magically becomes Zelda again, and
she pukes up her secret stone.
Yeah.
That's not true.
I don't even remember.
I think
love saves her.
Yeah, whatever. It kind of ends it pretty quick after you kill the final blow to Ganondorf.
Yeah.
Great Dragon.
As nice. It were. But yes, by the end of the final fight, I was pleased. I was satisfied with the overall final portion of the game. Ganondorf is such an iconic character for me, and I had so many good sword duels with him that I was disappointed with that portion of the fight.
Interesting. So we've talked about this game for quite a while now, looking at the clock, but I think it's important that we give this behemoth like its fair share of coverage. You know, it's almost bigger than Elden Ring, at least. Maybe personally, I would disagree with that statement because I love Dark Souls and FromSoft so much. But as far as the scope of our podcast is concerned, a new big old Zelda game should probably be one of our biggest episodes yet. Right?
100%. Yeah.
So I'm glad we're continuing in exhaustive detail, and also listeners, thanks for sticking with us thus far.
Yeah.
What other kind of any other niggling points that are sticking out in your head? I've got a few. I've got some stuff to talk about still.
Are they little nitpicky things, or are they overall impressions? Because
some sweeping impressions and some like questions to walk away with to kind of ask to close this out. But and some little. I mean, let's go over the music. I want to talk about the music.
Yeah,
let's talk about the music. It's all good.
Mm-hmm.
It's some of it. So much of it is so brilliant in how it's executed.
Yeah.
Did you? Please tell me, and answer honestly, did you ever detect the Ocarina of Time Ganondorf battle theme woven into any of the battle music?
No.
Because it's there, and it's crazy.
Really?
It's there. It's
like casual battles?
Yeah.
Really?
Uh-huh. First of all, the battle music improved tenfold. I love the regular encounter battle music so much. And then Breath of the Wild, it was like fine. It was pretty good. And in this one, it incorporates the motif from the original Battle theme in V-dubs, but like adds like crazy layers of instrumentation and arrangement on top of it. But like when the phase of the music where it like gets more intense, it literally does the bum 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 bum, and then and I hear that and I'm like, that never appears in Zelda anymore. Mm-hmm. That melody is distinct.
Yes.
This is the game where Ganondorf comes back.
Uh-huh.
Surely that's not on. They didn't do that on accident.
No.
They didn't do that on accident. Well, and I'll answer that it's not a question, it's a statement. That's what I felt. And then I'll fast forward to prove my own point because I am so smart. Fast forward to the Ganondorf fight, bada bing. They bring it. And in the Phantom Ganon fight. We never talked about Phantom Ganon.
Yeah, okay, Phantom Ganon's pretty cool.
Phantom Ganon's awesome. That's the one. That's like the one. That's not the only one. It's probably the biggest point of like, okay, you can bring that Zelda iconography back for Phantom Ganon because it's awesome.
Yeah.
It was cool.
It was weird how you had to defeat like the hands.
Yes.
The gloom hands, which I would call like this game's kind of Guardian equivalent almost.
Yeah, that's
kind of the panic-inducing moment where instead of a laser, the sky gets dark and the hands pop out of the ground.
Crazy.
And so you blow up all the hands in whatever fashion you would like.
Blow up is right. Bomb arrows are a good idea, for sure.
And then once you're done with them, Phantom Ganon appears and
the music changes.
Yes.
And it does the da-na-na-na-na. It does it. And then, of course, it brings it back to the Ganondorf fight.
Yeah.
And when Ganondorf goes Super Saiyan, it does the Blight, like the Blight / Calamity Ganon battle themes.
Oh, cool. Okay.
The da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so much more music in this game, it feels like. All of the battle music, all the field bosses have their own unique themes.
Right.
The what's it called? The King Ghidorahs. Gleeoks.
Yeah.
They have their own thing. That might be my favorite. I love the Flux Contract.
Those are fun to fight.
They're so much fun.
The Gleeoks are cool.
The field bosses are on point in this game.
Yes.
Everything in this game that's not tied to doing the core stories. Let's glow this game up a little bit.
Yeah.
The Gleeoks are incredible encounters.
Mm-hmm.
They're giant 3-headed dragons. They're basically King Ghidorah from Godzilla.
Yes.
They're based off a real Zelda enemy from the first Zelda game.
Right.
And they're just these massive 3-headed dragons that just like hang out in the overworld.
And massive is like key word. I think
huge.
They're the biggest monster you'll fight in the game.
Probably. And they're scary.
And they take advantage of all the sky dynamic.
Yeah.
That they'll fly. They
fly, and they're already impossibly high. You can hit them with your sword, sort of, but they use their wings to blow you away. Mm-hmm. They fire beams at you from their 3 heads that are super high up in the sky.
Yeah.
Like, when you first encounter it, it's like, it feels impossible.
Right.
But the way you conquer them is just so satisfying. Mm-hmm. And they have, like, their own, like, built-in, like, 3-phase structure, despite being, like, open-world field bosses.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but the first time I fought one, the experience as related thus far, it was scary and horrifying, but then it blew me off a cliff.
Yeah.
And it was a Thunder Gleeok, and it blew me all the way down off a cliff. And first of all, I thought I was going to die. I didn't. I survived the fall, but I was like, man, that was crazy.
Yeah.
And I couldn't climb up back the cliff. It was too high. It was that high of a cliff. Mm-hmm. I was like, man, that was crazy. I'm glad I got out of that one. And the Gleeok flew down to me, and the music did not stop, and it kept fighting me, like, I don't know, a mile away. Yeah. And it was crazy. And then I won, and it was incredible.
Okay, we're glowing the game up, but there's almost like, I see a path to my largest complaint with the game, and so, like, I don't know if now's the time to get that out of the way as well. What happens when you beat the Gleeok?
It feels really good because it was really fun to do.
Okay,
cool. Okay. I know, I see where you're going with this already, okay?
Okay.
But allow me to pre-counter it with the Gleeok is exciting and fun to fight every time. Okay. Phantom Ganon was, like, pretty fun to fight every time. The hands were a cool challenge. Mm-hmm. Even, like, the regular combat encounters, I don't know. I'm a child. As long as it's almost just because it has cool music.
Yeah.
Like if a battle has cool music, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Even if it's tedious and annoying.
Yeah, fair.
It's like even if a challenge is preposterous, if it has cool music to motivate me, then I'll keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That is a pattern in myself that I have just detected over the years being a gamer, and I live at peace with it.
Okay.
However, I do see where you're going with this.
What do you get?
I've deviated from that answer.
What do you get?
You get these materials. You get 2 Gleeok wings and 3 Gleeok horns, generally abouts. You get a couple monster parts.
And what do those monster parts do?
You can cook them into elixirs for various stat buffs, or you can combine them to your weapons for
extra power on your sword. You'll attach the Gleeok horn, and it boosts your sword damage by 28.
And then that sword will die in like 30 hits.
Yes.
Later on down the line.
That is just a kind of a very neat encapsulation of my ultimate gripe, my unfortunately lasting impression on the game as a whole, is that nothing ever feels quite rewarding enough that it impacts either the rest of the game or changes what you are going to be doing for the rest of the game. No side quest ever delivers an item or an ability or an upgrade that causes me to change my strategy for how I am going to interact with the rest of the game for the next 100 hours, etc. How I started playing the game is how I finished playing the game. Even if I got more health, even if my armor was ultimately upgraded and I took less damage from the enemies, for me, and it's kind of the same in Breath of the Wild, there's no sense of accomplishment throughout the entirety of the game.
Not even for the shrines?
Well, I think in B-dubs, there was a sense of accomplishment for getting a new heart, because that was kind of a new thing that they were incorporating. Mm-hmm. But here in Tears of the Kingdom, I've done that structure before. I knew I needed 4 shrines to get another heart to increase my stamina, and yes, maybe now I can climb to the top of this mountain. But at the mountain, it's more just finite resources to temporarily boost my weapon that's going to self-destruct in 30 hits, and then I'm going to have to rinse and repeat. And there's just something so temporary about any sense of reward that the game provides you that I never just felt like growth with Link, growth with the experience. It is kind of rinse and repeat through the entire game. And it is a B-dubs, Tears of the Kingdom, in conjunction, I will not say flaw, but just condition of the state of the game, how they have built it.
That open-ended design philosophy. It's a symptom of it.
Yes.
It's right now it's a symptom of it. It doesn't feel like an insolvable problem. And no. I'll tell you why. It's because, or we don't know. I don't know for sure if it's a solvable problem, whether to make like all these systems. It's the means to ends. It's the challenge versus reward. It's like your reward for killing a Gleeok should be something useful, like a battery upgrade.
Yes.
That should, the first time you kill each Gleeok on the map should be the battery upgrade.
Yes.
So a contemporary example that we've talked about recently is Elden Ring. Mm-hmm. It's got this big open world. It's the same deal. But something that we lamented, I recall, is that sometimes you'll find this dungeon, this copy-pasted dungeon, mm-hmm. and you'll get through it because you don't know what the reward will be, and the reward will be something that doesn't match up with your character build at all. So it's just like functionally a waste of time.
Sure.
And it maybe even wasn't fun. The means to ends are both not worth it.
Right.
A Gleeok is fun to fight.
No doubt.
But the ends is not worth it because the material in-game reward is not worth it. An example of both that does both well is a Metroid game. Super Metroid. Right? Mm-hmm. Because Super Metroid is riddled with tiny upgrades. It's riddled with missile upgrades and bomb upgrades and super missile upgrades that increase your capacity for each. Yeah,
right.
And you get those by solving environmental puzzles, exploring. It's interesting and fun to explore the world, and the reward is worth it because the final challenge, you have to use your missiles and super missiles.
Yeah,
you
and
can't.
You want as many as you can have.
The more you have, the easier it is.
Yeah,
in a way that's
easier isn't even the right word.
It rewards you for having engaged with the game because it just makes the boss less impossible.
Yes.
Maybe it's a matter of like cranking that difficulty dial up more in Zelda, at least, to make that Ganondorf fight more palatable. But I mean, it's that same idea. You're building up, you're gathering all these resources, you're upping your hearts, your stamina, your battery, you're getting the Master Sword, you're upgrading your armor, you have all these valuable materials like the Gleeok horns that attach to these valuable weapons to do the maximum amount of damage. You're building up your resources through the entire game to meet this one final challenge. And like, I don't know, maybe it all comes down to that final challenge, just like not being challenging enough. Mm-hmm. But your point and the general flaw of the design, where like each little task does not meet, like the ends do not justify the means for each little task.
Right.
Those should still be satisfying in and of themselves, and that's not impossible.
Right.
But
there is a formula to be found.
But it would take 6 more years of development, to make like every single tiny challenge bespoke and intentionally designed with a unique reward or like a worthwhile reward. Like they came darn close. There's 152 shrines, and in this one they're all pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Certainly,
it's a Herculean task, but when you've got the gumption like Nintendo and you actually aim that high and try to take it on, it does warrant critique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it makes sense.
It did.
It's pretty high concept.
Yeah,
game design philosophy stuff, but I feel like it explains why you feel that way.
Yeah.
I felt the same way too.
It just makes me sad that the ultimate feeling that I have walked away with is dissatisfaction overall, and some of it has to do with, from time to time, how empty the world feels, and whether and again, the world is not empty by any means, but what you are finding between large objectives are more things to attach to a weapon to give you temporary damage upgrades, or cooking materials, which, like, cooking sucks still.
It's all right.
And
it's
I don't,
okay.
Dude, how many times did you actually make a heat resistant meal? You know what I mean? How many times did you actually need to do that?
So many times.
How many times did you actually need to change your armor set between, yes, there are 30 different armor sets now, but to what end? Like, what, more than anything, it's cool to change into an aesthetically different set. It's not that you needed whatever.
Yeah, like stat buff or resistance.
Yes. And maybe that's just me being a brute force kind of guy, that I'm just going to bang my head against the wall and deal with the lightning strikes or the heat damage,
Join the club, pal. I didn't have a full row of hearts.
Right.
I just jam-packed health potions and, like, tanked all the hits and just got, perfect dodged everything.
Sure. And so, like, maybe that's just, like, my play style or something, but also that makes me question if this kind of game design is for me, I'm not willing to take the time to swap my armors and make the correct elixirs to... I'm just going to make health potions and heal when I need to heal, because ultimately they just feel like time taken or unnecessary.
It feels like such a paradox, because you could almost argue that all the armors, all the elixirs and stuff you can make, they make the game easier, and also make the game more accessible, so that, like, if I were a less avid game player and, like, the challenge was too hard, I could, like, implement some of these buffs and, like, use all my keep the sages out the whole time, like, upgrade my armor, facilitate, like, the game being easier for me. But it does also, like, it takes more work to do that. I don't know if it translates so well.
Yeah.
And to your point, yeah, it almost ends up pleasing no one.
like it doesn't please us, the hardcore gamers, because it all feels like unnecessary fluff and noise.
Yeah.
And to the less avid gamer, maybe it's too complex.
Yes.
You know, it's still too complex.
Uh-huh.
And maybe still too skillfully demanding as well. I don't know. It sits in a weird place.
Yeah.
Nintendo making like
impressive nonetheless.
Impressive nonetheless, but like they made an open world like kind of hardcore action game. I don't know if that's the right balance for them anymore.
Yeah. I have almost expunged all of my both toxicity and praise, perhaps, you know, because bottom line is this is like a gorgeous game. It's massive. There's lots to do. Whether it's worth the time or not is up to the individual player. But what else do you want to talk about?
Well, maybe it's time for some closing philosophical questions, right?
Yeah.
It is a gorgeous video game.
Mm-hmm.
It is a brilliant video. It's a genius video game, kind of, in many ways.
No doubt.
If maybe not eternally, I think it's more impressive right now than it will be in 5 years. Mm-hmm. You know, I think just like Breath of the Wild created a new template and like raised the bar for open world games and AAA studios, like in what like the scope of what they can put in a game. I think Tears of the Kingdom ups the ante again, no doubt. But I don't think it will age quite as gracefully.
Sure.
The moves it makes are not as deft as Breath of the Wild's were, but it's packed with flavor.
Yeah.
Everything, at least for my personal taste, I think the flavor of the game is tastier than Breath of the Wild.
Sure.
Whether it's just the Zelda trappings or the better music, the more appealing visuals, the greater variety in environments and characters and stuff, and obviously the gameplay. There's just so much going on and so much to dive into and explore. It's not for everybody, but it was big swaths of the game are for me, and I very much enjoyed it. The question is, who is it for? If someone has not played Breath of the Wild, what should they play first?
That's interesting.
I've had this issue recently.
Yeah.
And I sicked my friend on Breath of the Wild first, and we both seem to regret it a little bit.
Did they finish Breath of the Wild and go into Tears of the Kingdom?
Not yet.
Okay.
But I mean,
because I was going to say that's almost too. I resisted playing Breath of the Wild before Tears of the Kingdom came out because I knew they were going to be a very similar formula.
replaying.
Exactly. Yes. Replaying Breath of the Wild before Tears of the Kingdom came out because I knew that would be too much, all of it, for me. I would be tired of Tears of the Kingdom before I started Tears of the Kingdom.
Totally. Absolutely.
But that said, I still think, typically, I would say probably play Breath of the Wild before Tears of the Kingdom.
It's interesting that we're having this conversation so far after release, because for a long time, I don't know, I was talking about Tears of the Kingdom all the time when it came out. Mm-hmm. It's all I wanted to talk about.
Right.
And a bunch of people around me were playing it, but a bunch of people around me were hearing about it and hadn't played Breath of the Wild. They hadn't engaged with Zelda in that way, but they were hearing a lot about Tears of the Kingdom, and they were kind of interested. And then it's like that circle of hype that happens right around a game comes out when it's a game so big and like such it's just like behemoth size. It's like almost impenetrable. Yeah. But it's the sequel to another one of those. Right. It's like play Breath of the Wild first. Well, that's like 200 hours. Like how much of Breath of the Wild do they really need to play before they start Tears of the Kingdom or something? Like it's an unreasonable ask,
right? Almost,
but it's fascinating. And to that point, I would almost. Do you think Breath of the Wild is a better Wait, rewind. What did you have an answer? What did you say? You think Breath of the Wild is a better starting point?
I do. I think so. I think because even from a base level, purely the abilities, I think those are level 1 of what is going to become Ultra Hand and Ascend and some of the more complex functions that Tears of the Kingdom presents. Those are level 2 abilities. And so, if you can get... You don't even have to finish Breath of the Wild, but I would prefer you did. But get 30, 40, 50 hours in, understand how it plays and feels, what it means, and then maybe you can just jump into Tears of the Kingdom and enjoy it just as much understand where it's coming from. I again, I don't think that's the ideal scenario, but I would forgive somebody for playing for managing it like that.
Now, let me flip it.
Okay.
Consider someone that bought into the hype and played Tears of the Kingdom. Do they have to play Breath of the Wild afterwards? No. Isn't that awful?
I think
that awful?
I think it would be painful.
Isn't that awful?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it is.
So is Tears of the Kingdom the better game?
In a math formula?
Keep that silence in. Keep that pregnant
I think I might have to. I think
it's hard.
I think in a math formula on paper, yes, Tears of the Kingdom is the better game, but you can't have it without the other in existence. I don't know.
Maybe we can let this conundrum lie where it is, and maybe there'll be a third one. I kind of hope they make it into a trilogy and just cap it off, and then they never have to touch this formula again or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what I hope for the future of Zelda at this point.
I don't know either.
It
kind of scares me.
It scares me too.
Being Majora's Mask being not only my favorite Zelda game, but my favorite game of all time. You know what I mean? I'm very much in love with a certain structure of Zelda, and basically any Zelda game before Breath of the Wild, followed a similar structure.
Yeah.
And so it does scare me a little bit, what could be next, whether it's more or it's return to tradition or what.
As I believe I might be wrong about this, and if I'm wrong, I don't know why I'm bringing it up, but that they basically confirmed that this is the direction that Zelda's going.
I think I've heard that.
Did you see that they started copywriting certain game mechanics?
No.
From this game? They started patenting the part of the mechanics that involve weighted objects on moving platforms, basically. I don't know.
No way.
It's bizarre. But there's patent, you can view the patents themselves. They've been going around. I don't know.
I don't think of Zelda as a physics game.
No. That's Oblivion.
It's yeah.
Oblivion's a physics game.
Yeah, but it's an action adventure puzzle game.
It feels like the design philosophies that have existed since the first Zelda game are suddenly at war with each other.
Yeah,
it's the first Legend of Zelda for NES is historic because it was so open. It was so open. It was so
fair,
player driven. You know, it felt, or at least it gave the illusion of it.
Sure,
it was this game is you play it at your own pace. You make your own story practically, but obviously that was even more curated than Tears of the Kingdom is. It had these bespoke dungeons that you had to do roughly in this order.
Yeah,
designed combat and puzzle encounters, and I don't know. You can't have both at this scale. It feels like you can't have this much player agency and player freedom, while also trying to have this properly paced, bespoke dungeons and choreographed combat encounters. It just feels, because they have to play into each other. They can't be separate. And the way that that Tears of the Kingdom tries to intermingle them with the materials to reward your combat encounters, I don't know. It's just not all even.
Yeah.
And something a lot simpler and more elegant, for example, Majora's Mask, which has these meticulously paced story and world building segments and good I don't know. It's all there. And we may never see it again, because they're just gonna keep going bigger. And I mean, I guess do you think they're just gonna follow the trajectory of injecting more player freedom, more
I don't know. I can't tell if it's gonna be Elder Scrolls next. I can't decide if it's gonna go.
They're basically already there.
Generated.
Some of it's already there. All the Hylians in this game are generic.
Well, and the flip side, this is a very contemporary piece of the conversation that will lead into my next question. But Baldur's Gate 3 just released very recently, and it has taken the world by storm. But I can't help but imagine they're taking some notes from that. It's incredibly story-driven, but it is very dynamic and responds to your decisions remarkably. And,
in meaningful ways. In ways that change the trajectory of your game.
Exactly. And so, like, I wonder what kind of notes they are taking from the Game of the Year discussions going on right now. What they like and don't like, and what they see fitting with the Zelda formula. I don't know. I can't fathom what they think is next. What Nintendo thinks is next for Zelda.
It's scary to think about. We were having these conversations about 4 or 5 years ago,
Yeah.
When they first announced there was a sequel to Breath of the Wild coming out, it's like, maybe the sequel is going to be more linear. Mm-hmm. 7 linear dungeons.
Right.
And, we didn't know, and now we know, and now we don't know again.
Yeah. Game of the Year?
It's like the only new game I've played this year, so like sure, by default, I guess. Will it win? I don't know anymore.
I don't either. I have not played Baldur's Gate. Starfield isn't out yet. Diablo 4 I haven't played either, but I kind of just don't think that I think it'll be on the screen as, a runner in the Game of the Year, a contender, but I don't think that can possibly grasp it. There's something else that I've heard people discuss as an option that I can't quite come up with in my head right now, but...
Did a Yakuza come out? Or like a Dragon they are now?
I don't know. From what I have played of Tears of the Kingdom, what I've observed of Baldur's Gate 3, and from what I hear Starfield is attempting to achieve, I think it could be a pretty tight race, and all of our praise and all of our criticism of Tears of the Kingdom combined, I would not be surprised if it doesn't take the title.
Me neither. It almost feels like it feels like a turning point for the Game Awards this year. Is like, I feel like someone's going to be upset. Yeah. A lot of people will be upset no matter what wins. I feel like Baldur's Gate feels like the most artful choice. It feels like the most deserving.
My heart of hearts says Baldur's Gate probably deserves it.
Sure. I mean, Breath of the Wild has earned its spot on the list at least.
Oh.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it takes a game dev to measure which one is like more impressive or more deserving, because they're both so ambitious in like different directions.
Sure, totally.
Even though we've just like established that Breath of the Wild sort of does something, or Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom does some things like more abjectly wrong, and also like neither of us have played Baldur's Gate 3, so maybe it does some things wrong too.
Yeah.
But also on the surface, it's like, how could it?
Mm-hmm.
you know? I'm just excited to hear the Tears of the Kingdom theme by the game orchestra in that medley they do.
Tasty.
That's my favorite part of every show. I don't even care.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Good question. I just hope they all have fun out there. That's all I want.
I hope both teams win.
I hope everybody wins. I do think Tears of the Kingdom will probably get like the audience award.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like going to be the weird divide, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. What do you say?
We've been here for close to 2.5 hours. I feel pretty tooted out on Tears of the Kingdom, and it's going to be a while before I pick it back up, before I feel compelled to touch it again. I gave it my heart and soul for a lot of time and a long time, and again, I thoroughly enjoyed the experience while I was playing it. It's just funny what time and context and critical thought can present to my impression of a game, especially one that a series that I have so much love for.
I do wish that I don't think I love this game. I don't think I love it.
I can agree.
But it is special. It's like pretty special. We're so conflicted, but it'll be okay.
Yeah.
I say give it a shot.
I don't think that's a question.
I don't even know why I feel... Yeah, give it a shot. It's a Zelda game.
Yeah.
Fucking play it. It's a Zelda game. Anyone give a Zelda video game a shot. And do yourself a favor. Whatever.
Yeah.
Alright.
Well, alright, guys. Thank you. If you've made it this far, for sticking with us.
Godspeed.
We hope we stimulated your brain in some direction, somehow, throughout this conversation, because this is a long time coming for us, and we saved up a lot of opinions and energy for this. As always, thank you for listening Find us on Instagram if you want to tag along for some fun posts every once in a while. I think we have some good memes in our story, whatever. Like and subscribe. Follow us on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on right now.
And share us with your friends.
Yeah, tell your friends to give us a listen. Maybe not to this episode because it's 2.5 hours long. We start them off on something easier. But
yeah.
Any closing remarks?
No, I think we've talked enough.
Fair enough. This has been Nintengems. Thank you again, and we will see you next time.
Love you.